TiE as an ecosystem is really the largest ecosystem globally of individual entrepreneurs today, going to 60 by the end of the year. And I believe 13 countries going to 16. So we're finding new places. But chapters, the bulk of them are in the US, and the second set is in India. This organization, if you don't know already, TiE, the Indus entrepreneurs, started in Silicon Valley in '92 and has grown to that number of countries. And some premium names have been associated with it, continue to be associated. We also have, from among our members, which I believe there are 13,000 individual members, but quite significantly, we invite to the charter membership people who have something to give back, people who are willing to give back and have, even a few hours a month where they could, on the phone, mentor a new entrepreneur. So the whole idea is to support entrepreneurship. San Diego and Orange County chapters merged early last year. I served on the TiE Global Board at that time and had something to do with pulling those two together. So we are an extended group across a 70-mile expanse, supported by several sponsors. And we have two of our sponsors here, Hayden Trubet of Straddling Yucca. Hayden, thank you very much. He heads the local office of Straddling, and SYCR, that's the company, has its, I think its headquarters in Irvine. And Vani Chawla, I believe Vani Chawla of the Chawla Law Group, long time, somebody who has stuck with us through thick and thin. Thank you, Vani, appreciate it. And so our group here is tech, lawyers, VCs, and so we benefit from that. We've had, and if you're interested, there's been excellent talks, similar panels. We get the experts. We are known for getting excellent discussions on our website, now called TiE South Coast. So when we combined San Diego and Orange County, it was called South Coast. And if you go to TiE South Coast, feel free, if you're not able to access, please let us know, but these videos are up. There's about 30 of them for excellent talks on the type of topic we're talking, and biotech, and software, and a few other topics like that. So, and I also want to recognize that TiE Southern California, the one in LA and beyond, we have one member here who drove down, Anil Churiwala. There he is. Thank you for making that effort. And I know it's a significant thing, so you must have something to gain from this this panel. We must make sure you gain from it. You got free ride. Yes. So without further ado, I'd like to get our moderator up here. And I actually neglected to mention that Patrick Berry is our current president, and Patrick is stuck in traffic. So he asked me to step in, and so I had to quickly look up Magda on the web. And there's a long description here, but I will read a summary, if you will, just to introduce our illustrious moderator. She has a long history with local ComNexus organization and a few companies, including Novotel Wireless. But she is Director of Business Development at FieldLogix today, and if you would please say a few words about FieldLogix when you get up here. And her focus is M2M services. So in ComNexus, she co-chairs the SIG for M2M. She was before FieldLogix, co-founder, so a startup that she started called Virago Technology Corporation. And before that, she served as staff Director of Business Development at ComNexus. And prior to that, she was at Novotel Wireless. And of course, she is a native well, you went to school here, I guess, UCSD. And focuses on strategy planning, operations management, project management, of course business development, lifecycle management, and her passion, startup organizations. So she supports TiE very actively. So please welcome Magda Remillard.
Hi, thank you. Thanks, Anil. So when Anil asked me to moderate a panel here for TiE, one of the things, of course, that I wanted to do was discuss the machine-to-machine ecosystem and also kind of dive into more about what new opportunities lie in this area. This is something that's been around for a while, but it's just now gaining momentum again. And one of my other kind of interests is data analytics, and what can you do with all this data? I've had the rare privilege of working with a couple of the charter members of TiE a long time ago in Praja with CK Prahalad and Ramesh Jain, and that's where we were doing a lot of early stage data analytics. So for those of you who don't really understand, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hold the microphone down a little bit. Yeah.
Down like this? Okay. Thank you, David. So for those of you who don't really understand what machine-to-machine is, or we call it M2M, or the Internet of Things, this is a little visual representation of that. Some of these definitions that I've come across is, one of them, it says that machine-to-machine is a broad label that can be used to describe any technology that enables automated wired or wireless communication between mechanical or electronic devices. M2M allows networked machines to exchange information and perform actions without the manual assistance of humans. You probably have run across some of these machine-to-machine applications. You know, one of them, ones that come to mind is vehicle tracking, smart meters for your SDG&E information getting passed through. Those are all M2M applications. It's a simple concept. You know, you track a car, right? But it's a very complex model. M2M communications is based on a very simple concept: measure a quantifiable parameter, convert the analog data in TCP, transmit over an IP network, most often cellular, and convert the data into actionable information. That process, however, involves several players and solutions, and are realized via a very complex ecosystem. Recently, Technology Spectator said this year about the Internet of Things. Development of high-speed broadband infrastructure is now well and truly underway in many countries. And one of the real value propositions of this new infrastructure will be the further development of the Internet of Things, which is going to be a real game changer. It will transform every single sector of society and the economy, and it will be out of this environment that new businesses and even indeed new industries will be born. For the telecom, this trend will be driven not so much by the carriers as by the internet-based services, databases, and it looks as though these developments will come from the bottom up. Exciting new internet applications and mobile apps will see people installing sensors to link to the internet, and data gathering and real-time analytics will be valuable services that people will want to use. Companies will follow later, either by building their own IoT, Internet of Things, infrastructure, and/or by buying up some of the IoT startups. So I wanted to thank TiE for putting this on, and I would like for the panelists to come up, and we'll introduce ourselves and tell you more about each of their companies. So just to introduce myself again, Director of Business Development at FieldLogix. My team is over there. There's Yukon and some of our people. And FieldLogix is an M2M company that provides eco-friendly cloud-based solutions for tracking and monitoring industrial assets. Our system was designed for total accountability, compliance control, as well as to deliver actionable data for improved metrics and management capabilities. We leveraged our 10 years of experience from our legacy business in vehicle telematics to now diversify into the industrial asset management area. Our software already delivers more than just data. It correlates human behavior with the machines they interact with, such as driving behavior, fuel consumption, ensuring equipment is and ensuring that the equipment is handled properly. So why don't you guys now, starting with you, Mo, go ahead and introduce yourselves and your companies, and I'm going to switch my slides.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. It's wonderful to be here in San Diego again. I used to live in San Diego about 10 years or so, and now I moved up to the LA area. So you came from Orange County. I came from Diamond Bar, even a little bit further. So again, Mohammed Nasser. I go by Mo Nasser. I'm responsible for business development and product management in Sprint for the M2M product line. And I have, as I mentioned, roots here in San Diego. I used to work for Qualcomm in product management. I used to be also the head of product management for the CDMA product line at Ericsson here in San Diego and also in China. I lived in China for a little while. And previous to that, actually, I worked for GTE, MCI, and Siemens, and I traced my roots back to Orlando, Florida, which I started out with a company called Stromberg Carlson about 23 years ago.
Hi, I'm Naresh Soni. I'm CTO at Interdigital. My charter at Interdigital is new technology incubation, technology roadmap, and also advice on merger and acquisition opportunities. My background started at IBM in the computing arena, and then 10 years with IBM. Then I was really attracted with the trend in convergence between computing and communications, and I moved to AT&T Bell Labs, and from there I've been with ST Microelectronics at Nokia, and currently I'm at Interdigital. Interdigital has been around for 30 plus years, approximately over 200 engineers, mainly involved in research and development. 80% of them are PhDs, and we look at long-term horizon in the sense when things were analog, we were working on digital. When folks were working on voice, we worked on data. So we have long-term horizon. We made contributions to digital wireless technology, and we are a publicly traded company on NASDAQ, approximately 2011 revenues of $300 million.
Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Fred Yentz. I'm the president and CEO of ILS Technology. I may have come the furthest for this meeting. I left this morning at about 4 a.m., about 1 a.m. your time from Boca Raton, Florida. But it's a pleasure to be here. If I fall asleep, wake me up. ILS Technology is an M2M application platform provider. What that means is basically we take layer 4 to layer 7 and make it real easy. So vertically agnostic solution creation with a platform that's got tools that make it simple for the what we'll call the practitioner or the subject matter expert, not necessarily the programmer. I, like Naresh, I'm out on bad behavior. I was an IBMer at one time. Enjoyed living in Boca Raton, Florida for many years with my family, 3 children. So on the road a lot, making a lot of noise and a lot of fun in M2M. And I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Hi, I'm Subramanya. I go by Subra. I'm a faculty at National University. Looks like I'm the odd man out here, but until recently I was working at LG Electronics here in San Diego. And well, before that, to trace my roots, I worked in ASEA in Sweden for a while and Nokia in Finland for some time, and then I came to academia and then LG and back to academia. At LG, we were thinking of something like this, remotely related to M2M. And there was a talk about the LG white goods. When they are bought, the relation between the vendor and the customer ends pretty much. So they wanted to have a kind of a continuous flowing revenue every month. There's somebody buying a fridge or an air conditioner or a refrigerator, washer, dryer, giving a couple of dollars every month to the company. So in that context, I was involved in some kind of brainstorming, and maybe I would have written a couple of invention disclosures in this regard. But my most recent interest lies in digital content ecosystem and something related to M2M these days. So anything related to digital ecosystem, I think I just jump into that.
Okay, so before we start, can you hear me if I just talk?
No, take the mic. Get on the microphone, please.
I just wanted to start with this video because it, in my opinion, just really exemplifies what I think, this is an Ericsson video, and it really exemplifies the vision of M2M and how they see the future. And I just wanted to play it.
Personal on his computer, so
No, it's mine.
no sound.
It's just music.
Just put the microphone right on the speaker. Play it right down the harmonica. Phone will doing the harmonica.
Describe it. So basically the video goes through and it shows a person coming home with all the appliances all talking together and having this sort of Facebook-like application, and they're preparing the home for his return from work. And as you can see, they're trying to clean the carpet before he gets home, trying to set up the stove. Your Roomba is ready to go, and so this is kind of the young man comes home. And his food is being prepared. His house calls for takeout. They try to figure out whether the girlfriend should come or not. And then the TV just comes on, and there's a soccer game on, and he's like, "Well, forget the girlfriend. We'll just stay at home and do your own thing." So it's kind of a yeah. So it's a little bit of a utopia view of what this M2M, I think, is they're trying to say is going to be like.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a bit of also, coming from LA, I'm very much connected to this whole Hollywood scene. In 1985, there was a nice movie called Back to the Future. Remember that? Yeah. So Marty McFly on #2, when he actually became old and he kind of went back to the future in a sense, he comes home, he comes to his dining room, his fax machine comes up, and his TV comes up, and his boss comes on the TV and he goes, "You're fired." So the fax machine is connected, the TV is connected, and he has a geolocation on him, so that's M2M.
There you go. So actually this leads me to my first question, and I wanted to start with Professor Subramanya, or I can call you Subra, right? Okay. So given this vision with our fabulous technology that we're trying to see here, the vision of this Facebook of all things, human and machines, What do you think will be the bridge to merge the social and the machine into a single experience? And from your perspective, what part will data play in this scenario?
Well, let me start out with maybe a quote and maybe a couple of stories and tie this all together. First of all, what are we doing this? I mean, what is this all about? Why are we doing this? What is the ultimate objective of all of this? In one sentence, it's, in my opinion, to improve the quality of life in a cost-effective manner. So that pretty much is what I would like to sum it up with. And so let's take it, so there are two components here, improving quality of life and a cost-effective manner. So quality of life, you have to take into account the human nature, and you have to have something like user experience, and tying this also are some policies that should be enforced. When it comes to cost-effective manner, there are two major components, the technologies and the engineering which go into designing and building these systems and deploying them. Now, as I said, in any of these endeavors, it should be human-centric, or human beings should be part of this whole chain. So unless that is taken into account, then the technologies really lose their meaning. Okay, that's number one. Number two, whenever we have these new technologies, coming up with new technologies is kind of easier than finding out what you can do with these technologies. How much time do I have? About 5-10 minutes? So let me give you a historical background and how technologies have come by. And I'll quote Einstein's, one of Einstein's quotes, which is, imagination is more important than knowledge. As you all know, wireless electronic communication preceded wireline telephony. So when Marconi sent electronic signals over Atlantic from Italy to New York, that shows the birth of electronic communication. So when Alexander Graham Bell invented telephone, so by that time, wireless telegraphy was in vogue and very widespread use. So when Graham Bell invented the telephone, it was a new technology and people didn't know how to use it. And somebody came with a fantastic idea. He said, we can have these phones in homes and call them and tell them to pick up their telegrams from this telegraph office. So when a new technology comes, to what good use it can be put? That actually takes a visionary. There have been many instances in our history. And in the recent times, I think I can think of two technologies which have really had real impact. The internet and mobile tech, computing, internet and mobile technologies. So when you look at the technological developments in many of these areas like television or automobiles, healthcare, computing, communications, consumer electronics, and so on, unlike no two technologies, there are these three technologies which I call 3C, like computing, communications, consumer electronics. There have been some kind of a nice synergy or interaction or convergence, so to say. Now this is very important. See, these technologies didn't develop in isolation. There have been a nice interplay among these technologies, and this has fueled each other's growth so very well. And for instance, the advances in computing have directly impacted communications and consumer electronics and vice versa among all these three. Now to give you a kind of counter example, there has been a fantastic development in automobile industry, a fantastic development in healthcare. Now these two are kind of disjoint, there is no connection, so to say. And so of course, you can say I can get to the hospital faster in this car, But unless there is this kind of a synergy among these technologies, new things will not come about. So coming back to your question, so you have all these things totally connected, communicating with each other, these things and so-called entities, so human beings included. So there has to be a kind of a synergy between these entities. And there has to be this kind of a mobile-to-mobile or Internet of Things ecosystem. So for this ecosystem to flourish and sustain, of course, you have to have the key enablers, and the key enablers being the basic devices, systems, and processes. Among devices, you have the tagging devices, the sensing devices, the so-called shrinking devices, and thinking devices. The tagging are the RFIDs, the sensings are the sensors and actuators, and the shrinking devices are the nanotechnologies, and the thinking devices are the embedded computing in the systems. And again, to sustain this ecosystem, you have to have open standards and interoperability of these standards. Now, as this kind of funny quote, standards are nice to have, standards are good to have. Each one should have one. So you have to have, you can't restrict, there have been, history shows us that, for various reasons, companies come up with their own standards. They are so tied down to those, and for various reasons. So you have to have this kind of interoperability of standards and open standards for the technology to flourish, as has been shown by the internet. And I've already mentioned about this kind of convergence of different technologies. So the technologies cannot grow in isolation. Now, there has been this machine-to-machine communication of sorts. So it's nothing rather new here, although the scale has improved dramatically. But still, they are in isolation. They are not really converging and communicating with each other in a grand way. And also, as I mentioned, taking into account the human-centricness, human being as part of this whole chain is extremely important. And so user experience has to be taken into account in the design of any system overall. And then again, as part of this ecosystem, you have to have a nice business model or models. And then you have to put in place various policies. Let me just give you a story. This is a real thing. How technology should really be improved, but taking into account the human nature, needs, and so on. It's very interesting. Let me narrate the story. This was actually narrated by the Secretary of Science and Technology of, in the government of India. There was a summit here, Indo-US summit, so it was very interesting. I'll just take 2 minutes, and then, because when you take into account the development in technologies, you have to take this human element, and some of them are completely missing, so those technologies are bound to fail. Now, there was this remote village in the northwestern part of India, Rajasthan, and the women there, women folk, they had to walk about 2-3 miles to get drinking water. So they used to carry 3 pots on their heads and then walk a couple of miles each way and then fetch water and come back and do their daily chores. And then there was a United Nations funded project. So they said, these people came and said, okay, these people need water right in their homes. And then they spent millions of dollars and then had these pipelines laid out and there was water coming to their homes. Guess what? These ladies were lamenting, oh, we don't want water here. We used to go happily, we used to go in a group, we used to chat, and then we used to bring water. So that used to be a good part of our daily lives. Now we are stuck at home with this mother-in-law and father-in-law watching over us, and we have no lives. And as a matter of fact, in the bigger system, bigger picture, maybe they had a good part of their exercise and an outlet of their emotions and many things. So it's not just the technology alone. So the technology should have or should cater to the human needs. So that's, I think, is very important, number one. And the other thing is the technologies should provide, as we have seen in recent times, a platform for many divergent or seemingly different domains to interact. To be very specific, when iPhone was developed, it was not a piece of hardware in isolation. So there were many phones, smartphones, much before iPhone came. But what iPhone did was to provide a platform for millions of people, at least hundreds of thousands of people with creative ideas to do something that they can do and impact millions of lives. So this kind of a platform was something which was lacking. So in this M2M or Internet of Things, if there is a platform wherein all these disparate domains can come together, interact in a synergetic manner, and anybody can look like building bridges across different domains, then I think that's going to make a great impact than developing things in isolation.
Well, so just following up on that, one of the things that we're here to discuss is the opportunities in the revenue streams. And recently, Ericsson projected 50 billion connected devices by 2020. And then recently, analyst Mason reported that there's going to be revenues generated from M2M connectivity to reach $50 billion plus by 2021. And the number of machine-to-machine devices connections globally will grow to 2.1 billion by 2021, up from 104 million last year. So, there's also been very interesting M&A activity recently. Notably, Verizon Wireless acquired Hughes Telematics for $612 million right after acquiring Enphase. So for the entrepreneurs in our audience, giving now the whole picture of the ecosystem and what's Subra was talking about, creating a sort of environment like the iPhone, iTunes ecosystem. So for the entrepreneurs, how can a small company, and this would be for you, Mo, to start with, what are you looking for in your M2M partners? And if I'm in the data analytics area or in the data mining area, what opportunities could there be with Sprint, and how do you select your partners? And what is your strategy to kind of provide this platform and this kind of ecosystem?
Thank you, Magda, for this question. It is definitely the whole idea of the Internet of Things and the connected society that kind of the video attempted to show is something that Sprint believes in, and Sprint believes that this is the future that we are walking towards. And sometimes we do some sprints, but most of the time we're doing some walking, and sometimes we do some crawls to get to that point. And it's very evident in the fragmentation of M2M. Just like any new technology when it comes on the scene, for people to actually start adopting it, and for people to actually start making it as part of their everyday life, and where companies like Sprint as an operator start to make money out of that, it takes time. And the fragmentation, just because the way wireless communication is connecting so many diverse devices, makes it a little bit hard to get to some sort of a focus area, right? So when you think about wirelessly connecting things within healthcare, things within transportation, things within the insurance companies, so many different areas, digital signage, all types of areas are actually trying to come up on that bandwagon. And what ends up happening is entrepreneurism kind of flourishes. 2-3 people, smart people come together and say, hey, you know what? I can come up with the next best application that is kind of the killer app for M2M. It hasn't happened yet, but there's going to be quite a bit of them. Back in the day when data started to become, went on its high volume. In 1999, 2000, I remember that day people thought that data consumption is going to be humongous. It didn't happen, but it's happening now. Now the data consumption is going off the roof. About 5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, An average data usage was about maybe 2 megs a month, maybe 3 megs a month. About a year ago, it went up to about 1 to 2 gigs a month. Now, it's very easily, we can see that data usage is up about 30, maybe 35 gigs a month per user. So now we're seeing what we were talking about in 2000. And I think the same thing is happening with M2M. So lots of small companies are trying to kind of find that niche. And we as an operator, trying to work with multiple companies, doing multiple partnerships. I work with about 200 or so companies that are partners. Some are on the device side, some on the the service, software as a service, some on platform as a service. All of these companies are coming together to say, I've got something that is worthwhile for the consumer to ultimately pay money for so that we can make money out of it. And it's happening. So Sprint has been doing it for the last 10 to 12 years. It wasn't called M2M at that time, it was just called telematics. Now we've got M2M, now we've got the Internet of Things. So things are definitely coming into cohesion. And as Magda mentioned, the idea of companies gobbling other companies is definitely a good sign in a sense that there's some consolidation taking place. And with that, the idea of supporting from a carrier perspective multiple verticals proved, at least in the last 2 years, for Sprint to be a daunting task. So that's why strategically we have decided to actually hone in on 3 or 4 major areas where we think we can be successful, where we think the customers are ready to start to pay money and ready to actually use that type of technology for their everyday things. We can talk a little bit more about what these applications are, but generally it's very intuitive. Transportation is definitely one of them. Insurance is actually coming up to be one of them as well. I'm sure you've all heard about Progressive and Flow and the whole idea of the SnapTrack device that you see, that OBD2 device. That is going to be a game changer, I think. We can talk a little bit more later on about the whole amount of data that's being generated from that type of a device, and how we at Sprint and most of the operators, what are they trying to do with that data, and what the insurance companies are trying to do with that data to monetize that data. All of these are actually maturing the M2M space and getting it to the level where actually technology gets adopted and entrepreneurial companies start to actually make a difference.
Thanks, Mo. And Naresh and Fred, I also was hoping that you two may chime in. I know Interdigital often looks for very strategic partners, and that oftentimes a M2M solution requires partnering with a number of different companies. So maybe each of you could give me your view on what companies you're partnering with, what strategic technologies you're looking for, and are there any specific business model that you're looking to implement?
So first of all, let me give you my view of this M2M space. I think that gives ideas to folks in the audience, and especially entrepreneurs, where the challenges are. So first of all, I must say that I think this is a very compelling growing area. I think Magda talked about 50 billion devices. The way I look at it is, this is not about devices, it's about connections. It's about, what I see in 2020 is trillions of connections. So when you talk about trillions of connections, imagine if these trillions of connections has to go through operators' network. The amount of signaling that has to happen is just mind-boggling. Maybe Mo can attest to that. The signaling is a huge problem. But the amount of signaling that goes through the network is tremendous. The authentication, the device management, and the other task of device updates and things like that, I think has to be managed appropriately. The other thing that I see is it's not about Internet of Things. It's things to things. The connection is things to things and people to things. So I think that is an important aspect. Without person in between, I think this This technology cannot be mass market. The other thing is scalability. So if you look at the challenges I think Mohammed mentioned, the challenges are disparate networks, meaning each operator has different service platforms. And because of this, a lot of customization has to be done. A lot of certification money has to be spent. The other thing is, I think what you have to look at is, it's not just one type of connection, which is cellular connection. The other connections are, Zigbee, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and all these connections has to go through, an intermediary. What the architecture that we are proposing to alleviate this problem is a gateway architecture, where this heterogeneous devices, whether it's sensors, whether it's phones, whether it's appliances, they go through this gateway, and gateway is not a hardware-only type of concept. Your phone can be your gateway, your set-top box can be your gateway, whatever you have as connecting to the internet can be your gateway. So that is another thing that we are working on, and in order for us to proliferate and make this whole architecture scalable, we are working on the service layer APIs, where different services of these devices are exposed, and you can figure out what services these devices can provide. So that's another area, I think, of innovation. The next area of innovation is there is lots and lots of types of data. There is temperature, there is pressure, there is heartbeats, there is whatever data is out there. I think what we need to do is there needs to be a semantic layer associated with this data. And it's easy to discover, easy to interpret, and easy to make decisions. I think that's another area. So in Interdigital, what we are doing is we are working with several device partners, gateway platform partners, and also network operators. We are building proof of concept. We have all this hardware and software, and we are working with operators to prove that this is a scalable architecture. We are also working in standard bodies like ETSI, and I think 3GPP and other bodies are coming together in M2M to standardize this platform across different verticals. As Mohammed said, there are so many verticals in M2M, which is healthcare, telematics, and others. So these are basically the ecosystem partners and operators that we are working with. And also we are working with small startups too.
So it sounds to me like Fred, you and Naresh should try maybe be working together, your company providing the semantic filtering of the data, which we've discussed before, so maybe you can tell us more about,
Maybe before I leave, we'll
Okay.
be working together. I'm going to take a segue. We've taken a few segues, but let me take one quickly. And I think I'm going to tie a lot of things together for you. First of all, Magda, your video was the perfect description of M2M. It's harder. It seems harder than it needs to be. And it takes a hell of a lot longer to get done than it should. And there's a great vision, but the implementation's so slow that the management who's funding it traditionally gives up hope. Now, that's not to say that your video wasn't going to be great, but in reality,
it served the purpose anyway.
If you look at the last 10 years of M2M, there were a lot of false starts and a lot of sandbox projects that didn't really work. There's some phenomenal, notable projects that did. But the good news is the affordability and the ability to do things easy is truly upon us. It's a lot easier today than people have made it seem in the past. The gentleman on my right, the water story at the well, phenomenal thing. There's a couple rules of the road. You can't really modify buyer behavior. So let's do business with enterprises and people the way they want to be dealt with. So when I look at our marketplace, in ILS, we traditionally spend a lot of our time working on the B2B side. If I look at the Fortune 5,000 companies, they already have back offices. They have trouble ticket systems, they have costing systems, they have route management systems, they have things that they've invested millions of dollars in. And this isn't about a killer app. This is about onboarding right-time information into the apps and the ways you run your business today, and the ways that people do work, and the workforce that you have trained. Now, having said that, that doesn't sound real innovative, right? That doesn't sound like a game changer, but it is. Because when you can start imagining what's possible when these connections are had, right, to the point, again, that the professor made, you know, imagination is more important than knowledge, you're going to come up with so many use cases. So you got to get started to get started. So we take a very pragmatic approach at ILS Technology. The thought that there's billions of things already out there, they're just not meant to be connected today. So we want to create kind of a smartphone for a thing. We want to put a connection model onto that old thing that's out there, make it intelligent through a gateway model, bring it in to an enterprise that's trying to deliver a higher value service in the way that they do business today, and take a lot of the people and process out of it to get the data there in the right time in a reliable way. So when I look at this, I see the need for a lot of things, and the excitement, I think, for a lot of monetization of the network. When you look at connections versus devices, I'll give you a great example. On the high end, our technology is connecting $160 million lithography tools in every fab, every semiconductor fab in the world. On the low end, we're monitoring a pound of fryer oil at McDonald's. If you're not somewhere in between those two endpoints, I really don't want to talk to you, right? So it's scalable. But what's neat about it is not so much the scalability of the devices, it's about the uses of the data, the consumption points of the data, the different organizations that want access to that data going forward. So when we look at a simple solution, let's take a refrigeration monitoring solution in a C-store. I might be monitoring that refrigerator for predictive maintenance, because when it goes off, the ice cream melts and nobody's happy. But once I have that, I may want to monetize energy. I may want to look at route and service delivery for different things. I may want to tie it into my HVAC system. I may want to offload that information to carrier or train. It's still maybe one or two connections at that C-store. So to the point of devices or connections, there's so many back office connections and so many organizations that will pay for that connected information so that they can deliver a higher value service. And to do that, you need a lot of analytics and a lot of routing and a lot of exciting things in the network where I think a lot of innovation plays. So when we talk about big data, we talk about analytics, we see analytics at the edge. There's a lot of information out there, there's a lot of data. Data doesn't really matter. Information matters and events matter. And then when you get into the network, we've got to route this to the right consuming organization. You've got to make sure that he who's authorized to see these subsets of devices gets access to them. Those who aren't don't. There's security, auditability. There's a lot of intelligence built into the network elements to make this stuff happen. And then on the enterprise side, once you've got that data to the right consumption point, people want to do things like predictive analytics. They want to do things like data mining so they can build better next-gen products. So even within an organization, there's many, many use cases. So, you know, I think end-to-end, it can be easier than it is today. There's a lot more use cases than people think of, you know, when in the practical sense. We have to take advantage of a lot of existing technologies and buyer behavior, and we got to get started to get started. And then our imaginations and the monetization of M2M will really run wild. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. And actually, one of my questions was going to be to address the various challenges that you talked about, Naresh. But there's also other challenges, and many of those include things like the deployment of M2M, how to manage the application. like you mentioned, the devices. How do you put together the right solution for the right problem? Recently at FieldLogix, we were actually working on this kind of a problem. We were asked to respond to an RFP, and we're struggling because it's a large company, but the requirements that were given to us for the deployment, not so much the development, but the deployment requirements are so difficult that we're actually wondering whether we should even attempt to respond to it. So starting with UMO, what kind of things are you guys putting in place to minimize that problem? And how can we educate the enterprises in how they can more easily, what are they supposed to ask for so that smaller companies that are innovative can actually provide them a solution that will work for them, and that they will work with those companies to make sure that it's developed and deployed properly.
Yep. So,
and then you can each take a stab at it.
Yeah. So at Sprint, we definitely realize that there is that hurdle that you have to pass, first in the innovation of the technology, and then second in the deployment aspect of it. So what we've done is we've set up kind of a sandbox type environment up in the San Francisco area in Burlingame, where we actually invite small companies, entrepreneurs that have ideas to actually come into our labs and build that technology together. So we have engineers on site that sit down with the innovators, sit down with the companies, let them kind of connect to the network. We have simulators all over the place to show how would a device work within an urban environment, a suburban environment, because again, the applications are endless. And then we take it to the next level to say, how can you monetize that type of innovative technology? I give you, a real-world example, real-life example. In the city of San Francisco, we started out working with the city itself to provide a fleet management application, very simple fleet management application so that they know where the city buses are going around in the city. That's a very typical use of M2M. Which was great, worked very nice, so they were able to optimize their routes, they're able to actually use efficiencies within their applications, within their buses and their routes. And then later on, once they got a handle on the use of this technology, we started adding with them more applications, such as looking at the fleet itself and the health of the buses. The tires, the oil and gas, gauges, and reporting all those back to headquarters and trying to understand what's happening. So we added a little bit more value to that chain. And then later on, they wanted to even monetize. So they have a device that's already connected, and they started actually offering Wi-Fi service to get money out of consumers and put digital signs inside those buses, so they can have targeted marketing to people that are inside. So it's all about progression and starting with something that the company actually feels comfortable doing and having them kind of master that and then go to the next level, because there's always applications out there that people haven't thought about it. I'll give you another one that's, without taking too much time, is we had a customer actually who was a farmer. Why would you think a farmer actually wants M2M? And not even agricultural farmer, it was a livestock farmer. It's in Wisconsin. Apparently in the Midwest there's a problem with actually cow rustling. People steal cows. And that is an issue for them. So we ended up actually outfitting their cows with bracelets. And we uncovered a huge ring of cow rustlers that actually take the cows and they steal them. So the application was unbelievable, but yet, again, it's all about optimization, and it's all about making the use case work for the customers. I spoke a little bit about insurance. I want to just talk a little bit more about it, because it is, as I mentioned, it's kind of a game changer. Progressive is leading the charge right now, But a lot of you have heard and saw it on TV, but what you don't know is the impact of this type of an application that's going to actually impact us, you and I, fairly soon. When our rates either will go up or will go down based on our driving. So today, the only way insurance companies give you rates is they look at your gender, they look at your age, and they look at maybe at a credit report and say, all right, Anil, I'm going to give you $500 a month, or maybe a little less than that. So that's how they do it, right? The insurance companies are in the business of actually managing risk. They want to make sure that they have the right customer in place and give them the right amount of money that they have to actually collect from them. And M2M actually came in as a lifesaver from that perspective, or actually a game changer. With this device that goes inside of the car, it's an aftermarket device, it's called OBD2, plugs in every car after 1996, have that port in there. You might not know about it, go check it. When you go back to your car, look underneath the steering wheel, there's actually something there. And that's what, when you go to your car dealer, that's what they use to actually get information out of your car, and of course, you pay $120 an hour when you do that. So with that device, now the insurance companies know exactly how you drive. If you opt in, they give you 20, 30, 35% actually off your monthly bill, and in essence, they will manage the risk. People who don't opt in will actually have higher rates. Now, all this data that's being generated, they don't change data they don't change your premium just because of one incident. So there's a lot of data mining that actually takes place. There's a lot of scoring algorithms that actually play into that. And the model is changing where soon it won't be just the insurance company asking you to put this device. You can actually go buy that device yourself and put it in and have a score associated with you by a separate third party, and come to the insurance company and say, hey, I've got an A score. What kind of rate are you going to be giving me? So now, in essence, you're changing the model. You're changing the whole business model. So this is a good opportunity for businesses right now, right? If there's any entrepreneurs in here, think about that company. Think about the credit scoring, just like we have with a credit today. The same thing with driving credit score or a driving score. That's something that we'll actually use to create a different model for business. And again, I believe it is going to be a game changer.
Naresh, maybe you could add to it things like battery versus data consumption trade-offs, and vibrations and environments and things like that, and how to account for all of those kinds of issues.
So if you look at the devices, they are heterogeneous in nature. Some are battery operated, some are operated by power. I think this gateway architecture that I mentioned lends to flexibility and scalability, meaning you can connect even battery operated devices with, let's say, Zigbee or whatever type of, even wired type of connections to this gateway architecture. And the authentication, also the other need is, most of these devices, if you look at their behavior, they are sleeping most of the time. So, you need to make sure that, the data transmission requirements are very bursty in nature. So you need to schedule this data right time at the, so that this decision making can take place at the right time. If it is an emergency alert, so if it's a smoke alarm, for example, that needs to be going through the system right away. Things like that. I think if you build that intelligence into the gateway platform, I think it enables scalability. The other thing that you can add is what I mentioned to you, the semantic layer. So different heterogeneous types of devices, when they are connected, if you add semantics to it, I think the data can be interpreted in an easy way. Also, the other part is, I think you mentioned about the difficulty of deployment, meaning manageability, visibility from the network side. I think, with a gateway type of architecture, you can do the authentication, you can manage the device with a lightweight, OMA type of, device management, OMA, lightweight device management type of protocol, I would say. So if you do things like that in a flexible, scalable architecture with a gateway concept, I think deployment can be easy, and also you can add a lot of intelligence, because not all the intelligence can be added on the network side. It's very, very heavy if you want to add all the intelligence on the network side.
Okay.
Same question.
I will advocate the gateway model. We subscribe to that as well, and to the point of multiple consumers for data in a gateway space. Let's take a look at that car. The fact that we could get a credit score or a driving score or insurance can be monetized differently through risk management is one thing, but when the DOT can take a look at the movement of all vehicles, now we don't need necessarily cameras on the roads. Vehicles will tell you. There are certain cities that have implemented tracking of cabs, so now they know vehicle flow. There are cities that are looking at weather in rain in cabs because there's more stations on top of rooftops of cabs, and they know when to dispatch cabs to rainy areas because people want cabs when the rain comes. They don't want cabs when it's beautiful and you can walk home. So there's a simple connection to the top of a cab that could be going to Progressive Insurance. It could be going to a handheld, finding out when your ride's going to arrive. It could be going to DOT to find out flow. There's shock and vibe. You could look at potholes. There's weather. You could look at city and smart traffic management, dispatch. So again, that's just an example of you got to get started to get started. The problem was insurance, but the imagination takes over and you can come up with many, many things. Now on the point of gateways. So now this is a gateway in a cab, right? It's talking to a lot of different things. A weather station, the ODB port, location. It's consuming lots of different sense points. When you've got a gateway model, you know, you ever heard of the spectrum problem? Probably heard of the spectrum problem. You don't want data for data's sake. And if we have this thing we call intelligent connected devices, that doesn't mean you're streaming all the data to the cloud so you can process it, for God's sake. Intelligent devices means you're going to actually do some work at the edge and send the right stuff up to the network when you need it. And that's going to conserve bandwidth. It's going to conserve spectrum. It's going to conserve cost. Because if I love the guys, the do-it-yourselfers are beautiful in this space. They may have had a wired connection for a while, maybe a decade, and they hired a smart guy. They found a smart guy, you know, and a dog and maybe a box of pizzas or something. And they told this guy, if you put a wireless modem in this thing, we'll just reuse this stuff. Well, that worked for maybe the first month until they got their bill, right? When they were sampling every 10 seconds a bunch of meaningless data, and their first Wi-Fi, you know, first wireless bill, you know, was $1,300 for a $300 device. You know, they immediately said, we got to do things differently. So having the idea of sort of wireless aware, and when I say wireless aware, I'm not talking about a persistent IP. I'm talking about the charging models, the costing models, the QoS models, understanding how to deal with these connections. And the best way to deal with it is put a smart thing at the edge. The smarter you distributed processing, right? We've all been to this space. So thinking that everything's magically going to happen in the cloud is a fallacy of M2M. Thinking that everything's going to get consumed and all this raw data is going to be pushed up just all the time, and there's going to be these wonderfully huge farms in the sky that crunch all this data and burn all this power is truly a little bit ridiculous. Now, on the northbound side, right, I was an HTC One guy for about a week, and I went back to BlackBerry. Why? Maybe I'm old-fashioned, but you know, I did it for a couple of reasons, and I like to use RIM as an example. And we used, you know, Apple a minute ago with the iPhone. There were a lot of smartphones before RIM. They weren't that good. They were hard to implement. You know, you had to be a rocket scientist to make a smartphone work before BlackBerry. And there's been some great advancements since. But what did they do different? You're all remote assets to your companies today. And every day you're out and about. And your most favored back office application is email. So what RIM did is they created this thing called the BlackBerry Enterprise Server that went into your customer's data center, or yours, that kept your data safe, because where it resided was always kind of a concern. It made that last inch of integration seamless. And from that BlackBerry server all the way to this remote device called Me, it just worked. And it didn't take millions of service hours to deploy the first million BlackBerries. It just worked. And in M2M, it's the same darn way. Elevators and escalators, they don't need email. They need SAP PM, they need Oracle MOC, they need Siebel, and they need Salesforce, and they need IBM Cognos for analytics. So this is the whole idea. Put the stuff into the way people do business. So we have a gateway on the enterprise side too. And it's not called the BlackBerry Enterprise Server, that'd be a ripoff. But it's a device-wise enterprise server. And it talks those back office native applications, so you point and click and configure, and you can go from a device to your back office in a couple hours. Not a couple of months, not a couple of years, not as long as it takes to maybe even show a video, because you point, click, configure, hit, and go. So it's again, I'll subscribe to the gateway model, the distributed intelligence. There's a lot of business reasons, there's a lot of technical reasons, and it's a great place to watch. So, I would just encourage everybody to pay attention and think about monetizing all those different organizations that need that one connection at the end. Because who would have ever thought Progressive Insurance might ultimately reduce the cost of operating a DOT in a state? That's probably not the original use case, but it became the imagination and ultimately the value of that connection.
Actually, I just wanted, I'll get you on this next question, because this is kind of the conclusion, and I want to go into some little darker side of things. I started real utopian, now I want to go into a different area. So as you mentioned, it's clear that there are many opportunities looking ahead for new business models, creating new differentiators in the M2M market and new high-value opportunities and services. And all those look even brighter than they did before. There are, of course, some key issues to resolve, as we have been discussing, not least those to do with privacy and trust surrounding the use of all the data for purposes other than those it was originally gathered. This is a very key area of potential value in the future, but also needs to be handled very carefully. I know that we have been recently approached by various marketing firms wanting to resell our customer geolocation data, and the prices that have been quoted to us are astronomical. We're struggling with how to respond to those. And personally, I was actually a philosophy minor in college, so. I wanted to get each of your view on this topic, but I wanted to start with the professor about, is there something that combines the technology, the personal data, and ethics, and is that something that you actually cover in your studies?
Yeah.
And then go each one of you to answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. Business without ethics is perilous. We have an ethics component in pretty much all of our courses, and ACM, the Association for Computing Machinery, which is the professional body for all computing professionals, it requires that. We all know that no day goes by without a news item where there have been some issue related to ethics. And anyway, so there are, coming directly to your point of security and privacy, this is actually a very interesting point, because it's like two sides of a coin. If you want to get some advantages, some benefits of a technology, you have to give up some things. And it looks like security and privacy are two issues. You have to forego a little bit to get companies benefits, or more benefit. out of some of these technologies that we already have today, like your social networking, Google. I mean, if you send an email using Gmail and everything is logged sitting in their servers, but it even knows the content, of course, thanks to Google. Google uses algorithmics. There is no personal intervention, so everything is handled by algorithms. And so it gives me even suggestions based on the content of my email. I mean, what to buy or what to look for, and so on and so forth. So there is, of course, a loss of privacy, and then we pretty much have lost our privacy in some sense or the other. I mean, Google knows who I am, who you are pretty much, and you know, everything that we see, that we hear, it's stored and archived and later queried and retrieved. You make a call to any place, your customer service, your call is being recorded for quality purposes, and we never see an improvement in quality, but of course the data stays there forever. You know, there's several exabytes of data sitting there. As a matter of fact, all words ever spoken by human beings ever, it's about 5 exabytes of data. And 1,000 exabytes is a zettabyte, and we are actually moving into zettabyte era right now. And at the end of 2011, there were about 1,800 exabytes of data stored. And in any case, so security and privacy, it's very interesting. It's a double-edged sword, actually. So coming back to one of the examples given earlier about insurance and so on, many years ago, this actually happened to me, and I was living in Missouri at the time, and I was driving from Rolla, Missouri to St. Louis on I-44, and there was a car which was speeding, and it just went away and took the ramp, and then I was behind that, and the police caught me. And then he said, "You were speeding." I said, "No, the car which was speeding, it took the ramp and it's out, and I'm just going." So there was nothing I could do. It was his word against my word. So at that time I thought, you know, this is unfair. You know, technology should do something about it. I said, okay, what about these automakers if they have some kind of a monitor, like your black box in your aircraft, not too sophisticated, but it keeps track of, I mean, there was no technology available at the time. GPS was not that commonly used, but I was just thinking it's like Gedanken experiment, like thought experiment. So I said, okay, if there is this black box-like device in your car which keeps track of, say, your speeding history for the last hour, and it keep on doing that. And then in case of a dispute like this, a trusted third party like the judge only has a key, and then he can unlock that and say this one. So it's tamper-proof. Nobody can do that. But then with this, then the location is a problem. So how do you know it was that location? Maybe you have been driving somewhere. Now with these technologies, with geo-tracking, you can in fact absolutely pinpoint and say, if you have this recording for the last hour, he was driving in this route with this speed, you can pinpoint that. But then you lose your privacy because you're tracked. So, but then if you get into the situation and then you want to prove your innocence, then you have to forward the privacy. So it's a kind of a trade-off.
So basically it's
a little bit of trade-off there, but then as I said, in this ecosystem, there is a dimension called policy. So the policy should take into account the privacy and security policies. So that's the domain of the policy.
Okay, Fred, what do you guys do?
A couple of quick things. So security, privacy, ethics are all huge. First of all, we subscribe to the idea that network security is baseline. It's not the answer. M2M has traditionally been solved by a custom CAPN or some sort of a VPN inside, and it's end-to-end, and everybody thinks it's great. We're a big proponent of edge-based security, so the device and the gateways have security policies, users, organizations have policies. We do things like session-based management, so there's no man-in-the-middle attacks. So we take sort of the role of security from sort of the network layer all the way through to what typically people think of as an enterprise-grade solution. Now, having said that, no one ever likes to talk about how great your security is because everybody's trying to beat you every day. And it's something you got to be diligent on every day. On the issue of privacy, data transparency, it's about business model flexibility and ethics. So at ILS Technology, we deal in a space where we'll allow our SDP, our core network element infrastructure to reside in anybody's network. So if we're working with the DoD or a defense contractor, we'll allow our cloud to live in their space. We have a policy. If we're collecting data on your behalf, it's your data. That's our policy. Is it exciting to think about monetizing in those wonderful offers? Yeah, it might make my CFO pretty happy, but it would probably not make others very happy. So we have to deal with data in transit options, and we have to deal with data at rest options. And we're the custodians of our customers' data if we're allowed to keep it, and we're supposed to maybe display it and provision it, but we're going to do that in a way that's above board all the time. So security, access, audit are all big key things. And this is where, I didn't say ILS, we're a 12-year-old company with a 30-year history. And people say, well, what is ILS? And a lot of times when they hear me talk, they say, it's a long story. But, it's an IBM legacy and a superior team. We've been around for a really, really long time, and we've thought about all the ways things can go wrong. Doing the garden path implementation of something like M2M seems easy. And when you solve the connection problem, which might be the first order problem, you've connected. You've got a dozen second order problems that are more perilous than the first. So, all of this ties together: security, authentication, audit, privacy. It's all about being, I think, a mature platform and understanding, how the world needs to work.
So my view of the world is, I think, again, going back to distributed intelligence. If you have distributed intelligence and layers of intelligence, the gateway architecture lends itself naturally towards that. The other example that Professor mentioned about, let's say you have a black box in the car and you are recording your location. If you don't want to broadcast your location, the user should have that flexibility to turn off broadcasting location, just record the location in the black box and not to broadcast. And so just giving an example, with gateway architecture, the user or the owner of the data has that flexibility to turn on and off certain types of data to really, take care of the privacy issues or concerns the user or users, a group of users has. And I think doing a layered security architecture, you can update the policy easily, because if it's done somewhere in remote place in the network, user doesn't know where to go to update the security policy, to take care of any malware or attacks that take place. So I think the distributed gateway architecture really lends itself towards that, and having that flexibility, turning off any data that you want to broadcast, I think will at least prevent such privacy issues.
So privacy of data is something that at Sprint we take very, very seriously. We have actually been given awards on best practices when it comes to data, because forget about M2M. I mean, just today with your phone, right? We have, from a network perspective, we know a lot about the user. When you sign a contract, we have lots of information about you. We know where you go on the internet. I mean, lots of information. So we take security very, very seriously. As I mentioned, we have gotten awards and been recognized for the best practices that we do. Now, having said that, within the M2M world, as I mentioned, one of the key words that I said when I talked about the insurance, I said opt-in, right? If you opt in, which means you actually let go of some of your privacy. So you as a consumer need to actually be cognizant of the fact that you're giving up something for something, and you have to be aware of it and sign on the dotted line. And then comes the issue of owning the data, right? So from an insurance perspective, I think the insurance company would say, we own the data. The data is actually passing through Sprint's network or the current carrier's network. They have also a right to it. So that's the point of contention that is taking place right now. But a third party is the actual consumer themselves, right? The idea that I mentioned, that this data, if it's actually owned by the consumer, to use as a credit score that he or she can carry with him, that's yet another option. Another thing that's also sometimes we don't talk a whole lot about is when you strip away the identity of the person and you just take data as data to do modeling. M2M lends itself very nicely to that. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. We work with one of our partners, Intel. We have delivered a solution on a digital sign. You know, these signs that you see at the airports and all over the place where we wirelessly download all the information there. Well, these signs, some of them, the ones made by Intel, they have a sensor in there, almost like a camera-like. It doesn't take your picture, but what it does do, whatever, it actually allows to recognize who's actually, how many people are passing, how many people are watching, what areas are they watching from the ad, and male, female, age. All that information, if you strip away the identity, is gold, right? Because it actually gives you actionable data about the location of the sign, the type of advertisement that you should be putting there, and that's in the whole, you know, how many eyeballs, right? It's the whole Google model. So some of that actually will flourish, and you will see that happening. So yes, there's some privacy aspects to it, and we're very cognizant of that fact, and we work tirelessly to ensure the privacy of our customers. But also, on the other hand, there are instances where you can monetize this data in a innocuous way without endangering any person or any identity.
So, you wanted to make a
Yeah, I just want to add a little piece here, just maybe a couple of minutes. See, as I mentioned earlier, privacy is a very, very tricky issue, and of course, there's a trade-off here. If you let go of your privacy, you're going to get some benefits. That's always there, pretty much. So how much of it are you willing to let go, and how much benefit you are going to get out of let going of that little privacy? So there's a trade-off. It depends on the situation, depends on the person, depends on many, many complex things. Let me give you one example. This really happened. Suppose hypothetically, you say, I don't want to be tracked ever, and my location information should not be released to anybody by the cell phone companies, say. A couple of years ago, there was an accident in the state of Washington, and this car veered off the road, and then there's this lady driving, and the car turned turtle upside down, and she was trapped. And she survived for about 4 or 5 days somehow before the help could arrive. And when she didn't arrive home that night, they were concerned, and the husband lodged a complaint, and there was a search, and they don't know where to start. And then after a couple of days, the police suspected the husband, and because of that, the search began more intense. And then they called the cell phone company for somehow, the cell phone the registry had the last location of this cell phone signal, and based on that, they could locate her, and help arrived. Now, so the point I'm trying to drive home is there was a little bit of privacy lost, in the sense her location was known or made known to say some authorities. And on the flip side, it saved her life. So in summary, it's a complex issue, and one with a lot of trade-offs.
Right. So I just wanted to kind of go from this utopian view of, oh, we're going to go home, and all these appliances are going to be talking to each other, and but on the flip side is, I think that we may be giving up some of our privacy. Our life patterns will be, uploaded into some databases to be tracked. And are we really going to have as much choice as we think in determining what is exposed and what isn't? So that's the end. If you have any more questions from the audience, we have a couple more minutes, I think, right? Right.
Can I go ahead, Magda? Okay, let me say a famous quote from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm sorry, Dave, you can't do that. So, today there was an article about a network set up by Google where 16,000 computers were networked to, with a neural network. They were trained to discriminate the image of cats in any YouTube video. And this neural network taught itself over time to recognize any cat in any video on YouTube. And the researchers at Google were surprised that this machine network or neural network taught itself to recognize cat images on any YouTube video. So for you folks on the panel, when do you think machine-to-machine learning or machine-to-machine communication is going to take on a life of its own and maybe get out of control or become something that takes on a life of its own? And the professor is nodding his head over there.
Is it 2001 or Terminator?
2001: A Space Odyssey, yeah.
Right, but it's a Terminator question too, right?
Oh, it's a very interesting, very relevant question actually, and we don't know. Long time ago there was another quote, but I would say tangentially related. 1,000 monkeys about probabilities, and very much so in this internet and blogs and so on. Say 1,000 monkeys typing on 1,000 typewriters, how long does it take to produce a Shakespearean play? Now, computers are already, they have been good at a lot of things, as a matter of fact. In 1997, Deep Blue defeated the reigning world chess champion. And a couple of years ago, Watson, the machine, defeated, and it walked away with $1 million prize in Jeopardy. And so these work with huge knowledge bases. They derive their own rules, they learn things, and they do many things. As a matter of fact, many years ago, there used to be these expert systems which performed at the level of an MD in pathology. And today, as a matter of fact, the IBM didn't do it just for fun, and they want to monetize that. And they said the technologies they use in Watson, they want to deploy to healthcare industries where they can be invaluable. The physicians and pathologists can leverage those techniques to zero in on the diagnostics and so on. So coming back to your neural network of computers recognizing, the days are not far off. You can do all these mundane things, but then there is a fine line where can computers can learn things, can deduce things, but then there's a fine line. Now, when I say can they understand a story, perhaps yes. When I say, do they understand the moral of the story? Well, that's debatable. So there's a fine line here. Well, ultimately, computers can mimic many of the human activities, human thinking, the outward human behavior, but do they have conscience? Well, that's debatable. Well, that's the holy grail of psychologists and cognitive scientists. So as I said, to repeat, there are many tasks which the computers probably can do, but many things are probably not possible because there is an element of creativity which I think computers can, I would dare say, never get there. Given all the computing power probably working together, they cannot compete with the Shakespeare. Thank you.
Martha had a question.
Oh, sorry. If you were a venture capitalist and you had a choice of two companies, two M2M companies that you could bet on, one is in the consumer space with some killer solution for something or other, and the other was in the commercial space where you were solving some industry problems, which would you bet on?
Okay, my take is if you are in the consumer space, for example, if you look at healthcare, right? Healthcare is, today consumers are paying a lot for healthcare. I've seen some of the technologies that exponentially reduces healthcare cost. Exponential. Example I can give you is this doctor. He's a cardiologist. He developed technology to measure, to do EKG on the back of an iPhone. So he has embedded sensor on the back of the iPhone, and he's getting an FDA approval. And this cost less than $100. This is exponential cost reduction. I think these are the kind of technologies that VCs would invest in.
Mo, did you want to add?
Yeah, I can lend my opinion to that. So, having been in this business in the M2M space from a Sprint perspective for about 10 to 12 years, there's always been talk about the consumer app that actually allows M2M to be much more proliferated than it is today. And there's a lot of ideas that are actually popping up, but we haven't seen it. But yet, in the last 12 years, from an enterprise, so when we talk about business to business or enterprise M2M applications, at least those have actually been deployed and are generating money. So my bet would be on the enterprise.
So narrowing down further on that, who's going to win? Who are the big players? I mean, there are big players right here and small players. And where in the globe is the US preeminent, foreseeable future, or are you seeing, and this may be stepping out and, from the global point of view? It's too general a question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it depends on your optics. We are a pretty small company, but 70% of our business is international. We're with most of the international carriers, and we participate in a lot of the venues internationally. And what's interesting is when we're in the European venues, they're terrified that we're kicking their butts. They think the US is way ahead. They see all these numbers. It's amazing. When we're in the US, we look at things like, rate pay, insurance and all the different things that are happening in Europe, and people think that the Europeans are way ahead. So it really, I think, depends on the perspective. There's some constraints, I think, in Europe around privacy that are more rigid in some geographies than there are in the US that could be prohibitive. We're seeing a lot of activity in China and other activity in other geographies. So, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of winners. I've got some of our competitors that we sit on boards with and standards committees, and we joked around. We were at the Intel IDF Forum executive conference, and somebody said, well, if there's 50 billion or whatever the B is, who cares? When we get to there's so much out there, we don't have to fight over it yet. When we get to the last 100,000 units, I said, you can have it. Right? You can have the last 100,000. There's a lot to win out there. But I think geography, carrier, and markets, it's going to be too hard to call. I think there's going to be just a lot of winners.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of give you my view on, from a winners and more winners, because it's all going to be hopefully, growth all over the place. If you had asked me that question about 10 years ago, Anil, I would have said Europe, because they are early adopters in terms of technology, and they've proved that, and even also in the Far East. But the last 10 years and what's happening in the last couple of years in the United States have surprised me quite a bit with the adoption of iPhone, with the whole idea of intelligent or smartphones. The U.S. is making quite a bit of change in technology adoption. People, I mean, I've seen grandpas and grandmas actually going after smartphones. So I think there's some shift that's happening. And just like any other technologies, M2M is yet another technology. So again, my bet, I would say, is on the U.S.
There's one more question.
So with M2M and all these emerging technologies, there are a lot of niche applications out there. At what point do carriers like Sprint, some of them maybe even Interdigital, take notice? I mean, what types of volumes do you look for? Do you wait till it reaches some threshold, or do you look at high potential, kind of very early stage technology? And then once you do that, once you do take notice, what type of support do you provide those technologies?
Yeah. So from a Sprint perspective, again, we look at all companies initially equal from an ideation perspective. We invite them to our sandbox that I talked about. We work with them, and we have a criteria that actually goes beyond, that says, all right, is this viable, not viable, looking at the market and what could it actually do. We have actually worked with companies that have 3 or 4 people, and we've worked with big companies like Trimble, right? So we've got the whole plethora and range. That is not to say, that it is good to do that, because sometimes it takes away your energy because you're working with so many. But so we put that little filter, if I may say so, in between, because on the hopes that one day that entrepreneur, that idea is going to come, and we want to be behind it. I mean, we saw that happening quite a bit. So we're not going to give up on small companies. But in terms of commercialization, what we actually take and commercialize and send out to our sales force, we look for things that are actually, let's say 10,000 units and above in the first year. That's what actually at least gets the executive's attention. So that's kind of the number.
I need to end. I'm sure if you guys are going to be around, you can maybe come over and ask some questions, but Anil is putting me on the stage. So.
You have to say that was a wonderful discussion, Magda. Thank you very much for pulling it together and tying the different experts into coming out with their views. And please give a round of applause to Magda. And in that connection, we have some small gifts for our illustrious panel. So I will do that as you all watch. I believe this is if I'm not wrong, Preeti, a book written by one of our charter members. Professor Goldsmith's book on the mojo and how to keep it. Hey, I'm there. Mojo.
I be mojo, hey.
Okay, for those of you who came here for the first time, I hope you'll come back. By the way, there's a few, for a few minutes, maybe even outside, there are a few more people that you might want to meet. Oma was mentioned. Our Oma GM is sitting right here, so we should definitely seek him out. And there are many other people, and I don't mean to just pick on that. So I hope you'll come back to our next event. Look out for that. Preeti, I don't know if we circulated flyers for that. So hope to see you again. Thank you very much.